Hello, this is again Dr. Jonathan Bentovish. I'm recording another important talk or presentation, and that presentation is quite important. It follows the publication of a second special issue about God's physics being the new paradigm for the 21st century. It follows the publication of the God's Physics book, which was published by iUniverse.com. And it's quite urgent, actually. That's why I'm recording it right now, not even in my office. And the topic of the reason that this talk is urgent, actually the topic of the paper itself was that was published now amongst 17 other breakthrough scientific articles published in the second special issue by an international scientific journal. And the topic of this article is an urgent call for cosmologists and astronomers to validate the critical prediction of God's physics new paradigm. So I'll explain what this article is about, and in fact what this urgent call for cosmologists, astronomers, and also experimental physicists to test this new God's physics critical prediction. And perhaps the right place to start is to equate between this validation, this call for astronomers, cosmologists to validate the critical prediction of God's physics paradigm. This can be equated, and in fact is equivalent to what happened about 100 years ago in 1919, when Einstein's general relativity theory had to be validated. And at that point in time, Einstein's theory was the new paradigm. The old paradigm was Newtonian mechanics and also Maxwellian electromagnetic theory. There was a contradiction between these two pillars, so to speak, of the old, what I call Material-Causal paradigm. That's the Newtonian mechanics, essentially. And so there was a contradiction within Newtonian mechanics and Maxwellian theory, the old paradigm, the old Material-Causal paradigm. The old Newtonian paradigm. And the old Newtonian paradigm could not explain the ether concept. The ether element was supposed to perfuse the whole universe, and much of Newtonian mechanics was based on that, but that ether concept could not be detected. And Einstein came along. This is considered a paradigmatic crisis. Thomas Kuhn again described such a phase, a natural phase along the development of any scientific discipline. And his thesis, Thomas Kuhn, is considered a very famous and well-accepted philosopher of science. And his thesis essentially is saying that science evolves by shifting between alternating phases. The first phase would be the standard science, where you have an acceptable scientific paradigm like Newtonian mechanics, and that paradigm works for a while. And after a while, it stops being very functional. It becomes inadequate. First, because there is a contradiction between, in the case of Newtonian mechanics, the two pillars of that old paradigm, 19th century paradigm, where Newtonian mechanics seemed contradictory of Maxwellian theory. Second of all, there appear certain unexplained empirical physical phenomena that the old paradigm cannot account for. In the case of Newtonian mechanics and Maxwellian theory, this was the ether concept, which was a hypothetical concept, could not be detected, and much of the old paradigm, Newtonian mechanics, relied on the existence of the ether. So when the ether could not be detected, that's where Einstein came along and, in a sense, pushed science, according to Kuhn's analysis, towards the alternating phase of science, which is a paradigmatic shift. Paradigmatic shift is a point in time where, again, the old paradigm, standard paradigm, doesn't work any longer. Doesn't suffice to explain the universe or major phenomena within it. There seems to be theoretical inconsistencies, and therefore there is a need for a paradigmatic shift from the old standard paradigm to a new paradigm. In the case of relativity theory or general relativity theory, that was a new paradigm. The key point I'm trying to get at now is that when you have a paradigmatic shift, in order for science to make that leap to expand essentially the paradigm from the older standard paradigm to a new, broader new paradigm, in the case of Einstein it was general relativity theory, which contains Newtonian mechanics as a special case. In order to make that paradigmatic shift, there needs to be a verification, an empirical verification of at least one critical prediction for which the new paradigm has a different prediction than the old paradigm. And that's what Einstein did. In 1919, thanks to Eddington's bold expedition and measurement, and I will be calling today, and in the a few articles that were published now in the special issue, the second special issue, I called upon those bold astronomers, cosmologists, just like Eddington did, to really go out and test a critical prediction that differentiates between the new God's physics paradigm and the old Material-Causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics. But again, just to complete the analogy, so Einstein, when he came along and he said, okay, general relativity theory is able to resolve the apparent inconsistencies between Newtonian mechanics and Maxwellian theory, is able to advance science much greater. It's a much more elaborate and expansive understanding of the universe. But in order for science and scientists to accept Einstein's new general relativity theory, Einstein had to come up with one critical prediction for which his general relativity theory, the new paradigm of 20th century physics, that his general relativity theory had a critical prediction that was different from the predictions of Newtonian mechanics. And that prediction in the case of Einstein was the prediction about the greater curvature of Mercury's Perihellion pathway. It's curved twice as much, the value of its curvature is twice as much as was predicted by Newtonian mechanics. So Einstein said, okay, he asked astronomers, cosmologists, to carry out a critical a test of his critical prediction, which said that Mercury's Perihellion pathway would be 1.6 arc, much more curved than Newtonian mechanics prediction, which was 0.8. And that could be carried out for Einstein's prediction during the solar eclipse of 1919. And in fact, Eddington, during this 1919 solar eclipse time, ventured out and made the very important measurements, astronomical measurements, that in fact showed or proved that Einstein's prediction, critical prediction of the curvature of Mercury's Perihellion traveling pathway would be 1.6 rather than 0.8. When that was verified by Eddington, overnight Einstein's general relativity theory was accepted. And this is exactly what I'm calling now and astronomers, cosmologists to carry out, if you may, an equivalent measurement of a new critical prediction. And that critical prediction, I'm going to jump to the end result of what the critical prediction is, and then I'm going to explain that, and then I'm going to explain what are the ramifications for the old paradigm, for dark matter, dark energy. How does it advance science considerably? So the critical prediction of God's physics paradigm that's what I called astronomers, cosmologists to test right now, is that during a very special time, which is during the Jewish Rosh Hashana, the new year for the Jewish people, during the Jewish Rosh Hashana, which this year would be on September 7th and 8th, 2021, during those 2 days, and comparing so during these 2 days of Jewish Rosh Hashana, September 7th and 8th, I'm calling astronomers and cosmologists to test the accelerated rate of the universe's expansion before the 7th and 8th of September, during the 7th and 8th, and after the 7th and 8th. And the prediction, the critical prediction, unique critical prediction of God's physics paradigm is that, and I'm going to explain in a second what's the rationale behind this. But first of all, the critical prediction of the new God's physics paradigm is that when astronomers, cosmologists would measure the rate of the universe's expansion during the 7th, 8th of September 2021, they will see that when they measure it before the 7th and 8th, let's say ideally 2 weeks before the 7th and 8th, during the 7th, 8th, and 2 weeks after the 7th and 8th of September, they will find out that, or the prediction is, that the rate of the universe's expansion rate, the accelerated rate of the universe's expansion would be much lesser, much smaller before the 7th, 8th than during the 7th, 8th and following after that. So in other words, there's going to be a non-continuous leap increase in the universe's accelerated rate of expansion, which begins on the 7th, 8th. That new higher rate, that non-continuous leap increase in the universe's accelerated rate of expansion would begin on the 7th, 8th and carry out throughout the next whole Jewish New Year. Now, to the extent that this can be verified, tested, and validated, this is, first of all, no doubt a unique prediction of God's physics paradigm. It cannot be explained by general relativity theory or quantum mechanics. And so that would be a validation, a key validation of God's physics new paradigm for the 21st century, much the same way, the same manner that Eddington's verification of Einstein's predicted critical prediction of the double-valued Perihellion, Mercury's Perihellion curvature of 1.6 as opposed to 0.8 according to Newton, that's equivalent. So in other words, if we're able at the 7th and 8th of September and following that to observe that there is a much higher, there's a non-continuous increase in the universe's acceleration rate as in contrast or as compared to the accelerated rate of before the 7th and 8th of September 2021, that would be an unequivocal verification, validation of a critical prediction of God's physics paradigm, and that would indicate that God's physics paradigm is in fact the new paradigm for the 21st century. Now let me explain in briefly what's the rationale behind that, and also let me explain why this is such a critical prediction and how it differentiates from the corresponding prediction of relativity theory and quantum mechanics. So I'm just gonna take a few steps back and give the general background. Today, perhaps one of the biggest unresolved enigmas of modern physics, 21st century physics, carrying over from 20th century physics, in fact, is the accelerated expansion of the universe. According to general relativity theory, what we observe, and we know that the universe is accelerating its expansion, it's expanding quicker and quicker at a certain rate, that can only be explained according to the old model, the old, what I call Material-Causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics. That can only be explained by assuming the old Material-Causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics assumes that there must exist 95% more mass and energy than what we can observe, and that's a purely hypothetical concept of dark matter, dark energy. In brackets, it's quite equivalent to what happened with the ether concept, because for 2 decades, scientists, astronomers, cosmologists have been looking for this dark matter, dark energy, but could not be verified directly. There's no empirical proof or detection of the dark matter, dark energy. So the old paradigm is standing in a really problematic state of a paradigmatic crisis, just as what happened with Newtonian mechanics before Einstein's relativity theory. The paradigmatic crisis of the old Newtonian, of the old material-causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics is simply that according to that old material-causal paradigm, what is responsible for the way that the old model, material-causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics, the way it can explain or try to explain the accelerated rate of the universe's expansion is only by assuming that there exists dark matter and dark energy, which again are supposed to comprise up to 95% of all the mass and energy in the universe. But yet again, it cannot be detected. So we stand at a really paradigmatic crisis, again in parallel or in alongside the basic contradiction between relativity theory and quantum mechanics. That signifies a paradigmatic crisis, and it's calling for a paradigmatic shift. Now, according to the new God's physics paradigm, the accelerated rate of the expansion of the universe is not attributed to any material-causal interaction. And once again, I'm reminding the viewers that the reason that one of the basic discoveries and significant advancements and leap of the new God's physics paradigm is the fact that the God's physics paradigm discovered that there exists a singular, higher-ordered universal computational / consciousness principle, UCP, which simultaneously computes all the pixels, all the points in the universe simultaneously, creating at the incredible rate of c squared divided by Planck's constant 1.36 in the power of -50. That's the value. So the new God's physics paradigm assumes that there is this universal computational principle which computes each time a frame, like a picture of a three-dimensional picture of the whole universe simultaneously. That frame, that universal frame, exists for a trillionth of a second. Again, 1.36 by the power of -50, which is the result of c squared divided by Planck's constant. So for a trillionth of a second, the whole universe exists and is computed by the UCP, Universal Computational / Consciousness Principle, as a reality, as a one frame, simultaneous frame. And then between one frame and another, the whole universe, the whole frame, all the points, all the pixels in the frame dissolve back into this UCP. And that happens like the heart rate, so to speak. The pulsation is at every trillionth of a second. The UCP computes and produces simultaneously the whole universe, all the pixels in the universe, exhaustive spatial pixels in the universe simultaneously. Then it dissolves back into the UCP, and it goes on and on like this. So the idea is that because there is simultaneity of the UCP computing all the points in the universe at the same time for each consecutive frame, there cannot exist any cause and effect. So that negates between any two spatial pixels. So it negated the Big Bang model, it negated the existence of dark matter, dark energy, which assumed that there exist those purely hypothetical concepts or elements that are pushing, that are interacting with galaxies. But in truth, according to the new God's physics paradigm, you cannot have any such interaction, because for every frame, everything is computed at the same time. So even if dark matter existed, which again is highly speculative and actually is negated by the new God's physics paradigm, even if dark matter, dark energy existed, it could not interact with the rest of the universe, so it could not actually cause, so to speak, the accelerated expansion of the universe. So what's the alternative explanation of God's physics paradigm for the accelerated expansion of the universe? Simply put, it would be that, and now I'm bringing another theoretical postulate of God's physics paradigm. There is a theoretical postulate which I call the collective human consciousness focus hypothesis or postulate. And that essentially says that every time that you have a group of human beings that focus completely on this universal computational / consciousness principle, in religious terms it will be called God, but in scientific terms it is the universal consciousness principle, which again produces the whole universe and dissolves it, and produces it and dissolves it and evolves it. So whenever the collective human consciousness focus hypothesis states that whenever you have a collective focus, a group of human beings focusing on this universal consciousness principle, that may bring about a leap, a non-continuous leap in the rate of expansion of the universe. And so the idea is that when we measure one instant of such a collective human consciousness focus is the Jewish Rosh Hashana, in which millions of Jews all over the world focus completely on this universal consciousness principle, God in religious terms. They focus on it, they pray, they focus on this universal consciousness principle. So the prediction is that during those 2 days there will be a leap, there will be an increase, a non-continuous increase in the rate of the universe's expansion. And that new increased accelerated rate of expansion of the universe would carry over for the rest of the year, of the Jewish New Year. So this is a testable critical prediction. And again, it stems from a theoretical postulate that says universal consciousness principle can be affected or does respond to a collective human consciousness focus upon it, which happens, for instance, in the Jewish Rosh Hashana. That's why I'm calling astronomers and cosmologists, first of all, to test during those 2 days the accelerated expansion of the universe. Again, by the way, there could be other collective human consciousness focus, other time intervals in which millions or large groups of people are focusing on God or on this collective, on this universal consciousness principle, and that could be measured as well. But I'm calling, first of all, for one example, which is the Jewish Rosh Hashana New Year, to test, cosmologists, astronomers, to test whether in fact during those 2 days interval of collective human consciousness of the Jewish people, during the 7th and 8th of September 2021 in this year, that during those 2 days there will be an increase, a non-continuous increase in the rate of expansion of the universe, which would carry over throughout the next Jewish New Year. Now let me explain what the significance of so first of all, I'm calling astronomers, cosmologists, I'm calling for bold astronomers and cosmologists, just as Eddington was bold enough to go and test Einstein's prediction, which made a huge difference for science and for humanity, because after that validation, empirical validation, the whole of science accepted relativity theory as the new, broader, more exhaustive paradigm for 20th century physics. And obviously Newtonian mechanics became a special case within that broader generalization. In brackets, I'm quoting again Einstein, the great scientist, one of two greatest scientists the world has ever known, him and Isaac Newton. And when he was asked what would he wish the fate of his relativity theory would become in 100 years, he was asked, do you believe that your relativity theory will hold on as valid forever? What would happen in 100 years? And Einstein, being very humble, a true scientist, he said, no, I do not think it will hold valid forever. I just hope that my relativity theory will become a special case within a broader generalization, just as Newtonian mechanics became a special case within the broader generalization of relativity theory. Now let me explain what the significance of this empirical validation, which I'm calling astronomers, cosmologists, to test. What will be the significance once and if that critical empirical prediction of God's physics new paradigm of the non-continuous accelerated increase or expansion of the universe, that there will be an increase in a non-continuous increase in the rate of the universe's accelerated expansion rate during Rosh Hashana, during the 7th, 8th, and carrying over to the remainder of the year, as compared to before the 7th, 8th of September 2021. If that will be validated, if and when that will be validated, the resulting state of physics would be, first of all, as we said, dark matter, dark energy are the mechanisms, the hypothetical concepts through which the old paradigm, the old Material-Causal paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics, that's the only way that the old paradigm can explain the accelerated rate of the universe's expansion. And again, it's a little bit problematic because it comprises up to 95% of all the matter and energy in the universe, and it cannot be detected now for 2 decades. So we have to put a big question mark. And in fact, as Einstein discarded the ether concept as superfluous, i.e. non-existent, I also wrote a few articles, one of them entitled Could Dark Matter, Dark Energy be Superfluous, i.e. non-existent? So the significance of if in fact one of the astronomers, cosmologists verifies this critical empirical prediction of God's physics, if and when one of the astronomers or cosmologists would verify and validate that in fact the universe expands, or there is a non-continuous increase in the rate of expansion of the universe during the 7th and 8th of September 2021, that first of all could not be explained by the old model, because the old model assumes there is a dark matter, dark energy comprising up to 95% of all the mass and energy in the universe, cannot be detected, and they have nothing to do with any collective human consciousness focus, any special time interval during the year. So such a non-continuous leap in the expansion of the universe could not be explained by the old model, and it's in fact very unique to the new model, because it says that the reason that the universe expands, first of all, it's a unique prediction because it's a non-continuous acceleration, and it states that the reason that the universe expands at an accelerated rate, and in fact in an increasing accelerated rate, which is non-continuous, is due to the collective human consciousness focus, which is very unique to the God's physics paradigm, because the God's physics paradigm for the first time discovered that you have such a universal consciousness principle, and that universal consciousness principle can in fact respond to the collective human consciousness focus postulate or hypothesis. So again, just to recap, we stand at a very, very critical time and exciting time in the development of science. It's equivalent to Einstein's 1919 and Eddington's bold verification of Einstein's critical prediction. The old paradigm of relativity theory and quantum mechanics, the old material-causal paradigm, is breaking down essentially. In other words, there's theoretical inconsistencies. It cannot explain where up to 95% of all the mass and energy in the universe exists. It's purely hypothetical dark matter, dark energy concepts which cannot be verified. And therefore, Thomas Kuhn tells us we have to have a paradigmatic shift towards a new paradigm. That new paradigm seems to be the God's physics, computational unified field theory, new paradigm. And in order to make that move, in order for science to acknowledge and accept God's physics as the new paradigm for 21st century physics, we have to have those bold astronomers, cosmologists that would carry out, I'm calling out an urgent call for all cosmologists, astronomers in the world to carry out this time-sensitive measurement and comparison of the acceleration rate of the universe's expansion before the 7th, 8th of September and during and after the 7th, 8th of September 2021, because that verification could very well signify the acceptance of the new God's physics paradigm as the new 21st century physics paradigm, and that would open tremendous possibilities. I'm not going to go into that now in details, but we spoke about it, and it appears in many of the articles and also in the God's Physics A Universe book. This new paradigm has a completely new and exciting vision of the universe. The universe is produced and dissolved and reproduced all the time, trillions of times each second, by this universal consciousness principle. It introduces a moral principle which can select one of multiple possible futures for every individual human being. It transcends the speed of light, negates the Big Bang model. It does wonderful things, and it advances our understanding of the universe as a transient, phenomenal manifestation of this universal consciousness principle. So therefore it's of paramount importance. Just to conclude, it appears in all the articles that I've written, the special issue that has been published. But in any event, my direct email is Dr. Bentwich, DRBENTWICH@gmail.com, and I'm calling through this platform as well as through all the scientific articles and special issues that have been published in many lectures, international conference lectures, keynote opening talks that I'm delivering. I'm calling an urgent call for all cosmologists and astronomers to communicate with me and to collaborate and carry out this extremely important verification of the new God's physics paradigm. Thank you very much.